So, Sweta, we know that the importance of storytelling in the resume, in LinkedIn, the About section, especially in the interview part, where they need to show to the hiring manager or the recruiter that they have the skills to do this job. So, how can job seeker elevate their storytelling techniques in interview to make sure that they are the right fit for the company?
Great question there. So when it comes to interview, what happens is it's going back to the job description
Yeah,
and the resume that you've written. So chances are you got an interview because your resume was outstanding.
yeah,
So as a hiring manager coming from the corporate world, when I'm choosing you, that means we've vetted you out from the recruiter perspective that I've partnered with.
yeah,
And then now I'm 90% like sure about it that
yeah.
you're going to be probably one of the top candidates.
Mhm.
Trust me on that because I don't have a time to go around and find 20 more people. You are given that chance, and unless you bombed up the interview,
Yeah,
unless someone else is extraordinary, then you lose that spot. The
yeah,
first thing we're going to ask you is maybe tell me about yourself.
yeah,
And this is something that no one talks about it in the colleges, universities, or as a person as well, right?
yeah,
When you go to interview, when you go networking, no one talks
yeah.
about what's the right approach? And there's no right or wrong approach on this one, except how do you mitigate that biases and discrimination?
Mhm.
This is
Yeah,
where, when I work with a lot of immigrants and newcomers in Canada, they open cans and cans of personal information. And for example, I just moved from here, I've been here, I live right beside here. So none of that, none of that.
yeah.
I follow the structure. It's all about talking about your past strategically, what led you to go from past to this role. If you've been promoted, talk about promotions. Talk about achievement, the
Yeah.
results, and that directly ties up with the job that you're applying for. Give one data point on it. Don't bore them with the more data because if you keep on talking about achievement and achievement, what are
Mm,
you going to talk about it later on?
mm,
Because there's going to be a lot of areas that you would be exploring, right? And then talk about the companies, why you're going to apply for that role because this is where hiring managers thinking, what happened to the role? Why are
mm.
you leaving? So
Yeah,
don't even let them ask that question on that. Strategically, if you've been laid off, which I was, I would not wait for them to ask me because they would see the career gap on my resume,
yeah,
right? Address the elephant in the room pretty earlier on so it gets out of the system. You're not nervous. So being strategic, don't wait until the last minute.
mm,
So you know what? Unfortunately, my role was eliminated
yeah.
along with the 10 more. So you're diverting that from you to the other
Others.
people.
Mm,
And then you can say, I learned so much from this particular role where I've done this, this, this.
yeah.
And when I look at this job description, this is the ideal fit for me. And I was waiting for so long. Where were you? See what I did was smile.
Yeah,
Now your just pressure is off. It's like a dating,
yeah,
right? So you want to get to know them and you want to go back to the conversation. So where were you? Joke around it. But again, it depends on the individual, what kind of hiring manager you're working with it to. Don't just be order taker there.
yes.
Bring that personality pretty earlier on and start having the conversations right after on tell me about yourself. And for example, I did it for myself as well after bouncing back. People were planting trees in that department, and I said, by the way, you were all in media, and how is the tree planting? How many trees you planted? I'm relating that to the company and conversation as well, and I've read their mission and values and everything like that, right? Don't just go with the standard, tell me about yourself.
Yeah,
Be creative and put it out there. It's a storytelling as
yeah,
well.
yeah. And interviewing is a two-way communication. They are interviewing you, you can interview them in. And you can and make sure that you ask questions at the end. Do you have any specific questions what they should ask, or it depends on the person and the company?
Absolutely, right? And I do have 20 questions to ask, 20 plus questions to ask, depending on where you are in your career, right? On my website, teachingdo.com. And that's been like viral all over. And a lot of people come back to me and say, well, these are customized questions. So again, you can just bang your head against it and say, I'm going to ask these questions, but there might not be opportunity for it. The way I would ask question is do not wait until the end
Mhm.
Yeah, you can wait until the end as well if you
Yeah.
want to, but I suggest not to. As a hiring manager, I'm allotted the time of 45 minutes or something. I'm
Yes.
doing back-to-back interviews, right? So what I want people to do is ask me during the conversation as well. So for example, let's say when you're talking about when I'm asking you about, tell me the time when you went out above and beyond, let's say. You're
Hmm.
gonna go with the star or car, whatever technique that you're
Yeah.
okay with it, and then you go with that KPIs. And then I want you to ask the question as such, which is strategic right after you answer that question, would be moving on to the conversation flow, which is, by the way, we're on this topic. I would love to understand, how do you measure performance on this one, right? What
Yeah.
are your key performance indicator to be successful, and how often do you measure it, right?
Yeah.
So now what you're doing is you're not waiting until the last minute. You're asking those questions, and guess what? They're going to say, well, you're measuring customer satisfactions and you should have 80% or more to get the bonus, or like, to meet the
Mhm.
performance. Then guess what? Maybe you're at more than 85% all the time, meeting that requirement in previous company or the current company.
Yeah.
And then you strategize the answer later on. When did you go above and beyond? It's like, by the way, you just told me about 80%, and I've been meeting this need
Yeah.
consistently on my current or past role, and I'm so aligned with this role, right? So you're trying to understand KPIs as well, because what's your KPIs right now in current role might not be the same KPIs for that role. So don't just sit for it, ask questions. The right question matters, because you're going to be prepping yourself to stand out now, and the performance indicator as well.
Yeah. Those are great tips, Sweta. Thank you very much. And again, for the audience, if you have any other tips, you can leave them below and tune in next time for other great question with Sweta.